Welcome to episode 13 of the Rebel Army podcast, the official podcast of Cork City Football Club. This week, we get an inside look at the club from the Chief Operations Officer, plus we get a little look inside Crann Centre as well. Yeah, welcome back to the podcast. This week, it's a bit different. I'm in the studio in Cork, and Aaron is away on holidays, but I'm sure we'll hear from him in this podcast as well. We've recorded two interviews this week. We're going to talk to Éanna Buckley about his 18-year career at the club, and we're going to also talk to Padraig Mallon, the CEO of Crann Centre. First up, it's Éanna, but before that, Aaron's going to fill us in on how the fixtures went over the weekend.
So we'll jump right back to Friday. I know we've had a lot of games over the weekend. It's been a busy one, but on Friday, it was a first trip to Mount Hawk Park for Cork City in the league, but for a lot of Cork City supporters as well, myself included. A nice short journey. Well, it was supposed to be a short journey. There was very bad traffic on the way down, actually, so it took people a lot longer than we expected to get there. But a 1-0 win, another clean sheet, so a good result. One of those games, again, where it could have been, probably should have been, more than just one. We had a couple of chances. Jade Newman hit the bar. Cathal O'Sullivan nearly scored an absolute worldie, but an equally incredible save kept it out. We could have come away from it winning 4 or 5-0 and you would have felt it was a fair result. If you look back at the chances that we had, we did have the majority of them. Kerry didn't create a whole lot. The goal we got was a penalty. 9 minutes in, Evan McLaughlin got it. That's his second goal of the season, and both since he made the move to left back. There was a really vocal City support down there as well, actually. I was just above where the away supporters were, and the noise coming from there for 90 minutes was incredible. So that was brilliant to see. Hopefully we'll have the same on Friday in Coleman's Park. And again, another good result to keep that up. Beat Cove 3-0 a couple of weeks ago. That was the last game at Turner's Cross before the closure for a couple of weeks, and that was a really entertaining game as well, all things considered. As I said a while ago, I'm recording this before Monday's game actually happened, the game against Wexford, so I don't know how it went. We'll talk about it in next week's podcast, I'd imagine, as well as talking about this Friday's upcoming Cork derby down in Coleman's Park. On to Saturday then, and the TG Caher cameras were at Turner's Cross for the first time. The women's team took on Treaty. Good run of form coming into the game, and there was a lot of promotion in the week to try and beat the attendance record. We didn't beat it in the end, but there was a really good crowd, really loud crowd as well. It was a good atmosphere on Saturday. The girls really enjoyed it, and Danny really enjoyed it as well, and all the coaching staff. But the result unfortunately didn't go our way. It was a 3-0 defeat, so not ideal, especially with how the results had been in the last couple of weeks. But it did feel like it wasn't a case of Treaty were that much better than us or anything. I think the 3-0 probably flattered them a bit. It did just feel like it was sort of a bad day at the office. It had been a really bright start from City, to be honest. First half an hour or so, City saw most of the ball, were creating most of the chances that were there. Ciara Senna hit the crossbar with a corner only like a couple of minutes in. If that had gone in or something had come of that, it could have been a completely different game. But yeah, a disappointing one overall. But as I said, back at Turner's Cross on this Saturday for Shamrock Rovers, it's a 5 o'clock kickoff in that one, so if we could get another big crowd, that would be fantastic. 3 trips to Turner's Cross in the space of a week, between the women last Saturday, the men on Monday, and the women again on Saturday. We weren't there for a while, and we were back there 3 times in the space of a week, and to have 3 good crowds would be great. So if you're free on Saturday, tickets are on sale for that one. corkcityfc.ie/tickets. You can get them there, and you can also buy at the gate. €10 for adults, under 16s get in for free. Always a good atmosphere, always good fun, so make sure you get down for that. It was also another very busy weekend of academy action. All of our sides had matches over the weekend. The under-20s on Saturday took on Wexford in Bishopstown. 3-1 win, 2 goals from AJ Bowman and 1 from Jaden O'Donovan. Our women's under-17s were in action up at Mayfield United. A 2-1 win there over Carlo Kilkenny. Emma Hurley and Amy McCarthy with the goals in that. Our men's under-15 side took on Kerry, also at Mayfield United. A 3-1 win there. Morgan Kelleher, Killian Murphy and Alex O'Hurley with the 3 City goals there. On Sunday, it was a 7-2 win for our women's under-19 side over Treaty in Bishopstown. A first half hat-trick for Kaylee Still, then Grace Flanagan, Kelsey Cooper and Shauna Sheehan got 1 each. Our men's under-17s beat Cove Ramblers 2-0 in St. Coleman's Park. Jaden O'Donovan and Dylan O'Connell with the goals there. And our under-14s came from 1-0 down against Kerry to win 3-1. Cian O'Neill got a goal and Jack Cunningham got 2.
Welcome to the podcast, Éanna.
Thanks for having me.
God, Joe, you must be one of the longest fixtures in the club at this stage. Maybe not as long as the Doctor.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it, myself and a couple of people recently. The Doc is there, I think, since 2003.
Yeah.
I think Robbie Kelleher's around a long time as well.
Robbie, yeah, of course.
I'm there since July 2006, so coming up on 18 years now. So yeah,
So July
a long
2000.
old stint.
I'm guessing that you were a fan before you joined the club as in a working capacity.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I suppose I was thinking about it on the way out. Like I suppose first ever Cork City game I went to, I think was 93, 92 or 93. They played Leeds in Turner's Cross. Leeds had just won the Old First Division, the final team to win the Old First Division. Yeah. And I remember I was a massive fan of Gary McAllister, so her Leeds were in town, and my mom was kind of a bit of a Leeds fan and stuff like that, and I was just getting into football, and she brought myself and my brother along, and I remember like we were down in the corner by the Derry Nan and the St. Anne's, and Gary McAllister taking a corner in front of us. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Went to a couple of games. I remember they played Coventry out in Bishopstown another maybe a year or two later, stuff like that. Again, Gordon Strachan was playing. Like
I think I was at that one myself, actually. Yeah.
And we went to the odd game, and I suppose then Gareth Cronin came back from Sunderland to sign for City, and he'd gone over, I think, after his junior cert or whatever, and he came back to Ireland and signed with City, and he'd gone back to school to do his leaving, and my mom was teaching him, and he kind of said to her one day, kind of, the two boys are into football, you should bring them along to a game or whatever, and we started going to games then. I suppose that might have been 95, 96.
Yourself and your brother?
Yeah, it was myself and my brother, and my mom used to take us in. So we started going then, and I suppose really got the bug over the next few years. Obviously that was the team. Dave Barry was the manager, and they went on to win the FAI Cup in 98, the League Cup in 98. So it's a great team as well, like, and really got into it then. And
great
I suppose
characters as well when they're on the team, like.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I'd be very fortunate that probably got to know some of those guys, over the years. Like Decky Daly, I know Decky reasonably well now these days. Derek Collin, obviously, through his work in the FAI. John Caulfield, obviously, worked side by side with John for a good few years. Biscuit was in as the goalkeeping coach for a long time. Dealt with Noel Mooney when he was in the FAI and that. Like, so there was, and others as well. Like, but probably those few guys in particular. And it's just tremendous characters, really tremendous characters. So really got into it around then and kind of just grew from there, really, I suppose. Yeah.
So, like, obviously, you went to college or something. What did you study?
I went to college. I suppose I didn't really know what I wanted to do with life.
Sure, we're all like that at times,
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose I'd always had a bit of a thing for languages. So I went to college in Limerick. I did applied languages. Did German and Spanish and politics up there. And then I came back down to Cork, and I was doing a master's in Hispanic Studies in UCC. And I suppose the whole time through college I was working part-time in an off licence, a couple of shifts during the week and weekends and stuff like that, and then I'd work full-time in the summer. And I was just finishing up the master's in UCC, and at the time, I suppose where my head was at was I was thinking I was kind of going to maybe teaching a third level or something like that. And then I did the master's, and I was teaching beginner Spanish to first-year art students, and to be honest, I didn't really enjoy it.
Wasn't your cup of tea?
No, loved the language and everything like that, but standing up in front of a room full of people, not so comfortable. Yeah, so I suppose I was kind of at a bit of a crossroads, and I had been working on going back to Limerick to do a PhD and all this kind of stuff, and kind of out of the blue, really, I suppose. People might remember the club got an offer. Owen O'Callaghan had bought areas up in City Centre to build what is now Opera Lane, and there was some buildings lying idle and stuff like that, and I suppose he had offered it somehow or other. I don't know the ins and outs, but basically the club had got the offer of a premises on Patrick Street for 6 months.
I remember,
and I knew Brian Lennox was the owner at the time, and I knew Brian somewhat. I'd been involved in the supporters club, and Brian had come to some of our meetings, and we'd had a couple of chats and a couple of pints and stuff like that, and knew a couple of lads that were on the management committee of the club and stuff like that. And one of them kind of said to me, look, we're going setting up this shop in town. Do you want to come in and work it? Like, you're working the off license. Do you want to jack it in and work in a Cork City shop instead of a booze shop? And I was like, yeah, sure. Look, I'm going back up the road to Limerick there, to do the PhD there before long. So sure, look, if I'm going to make a few bob and pay off the car loan, I might as well do it working for Cork City. And suppose it was only ever meant to be for 6 months. So I started in July 2006, the week we played the Champions League qualifier against Apollon Limassol. And
there was a lot of buzz around the club, so like
massive.
People be looking for merchandise anyway.
Massive, yeah. And I suppose like, you know, that was it. Like first week we were playing at home to Apollon Limassol, went over to Cyprus then for the away leg, which I'd booked that trip before I ever even got the job offer from the club. And next thing we're playing Red Star Belgrade, and there's a queue halfway down Patrick Street for tickets on a Saturday morning, and the game sold out straight away and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, God, this is unbelievable. And I suppose just over the next few months then, as I said, you know, I was kind of having second thoughts about the teaching side of things, and geez, where am I going to go from here? And I think it just kind of happened that somebody working in the office stopped working in the office, and it was kind of a gap. Would you mind just, you know, keeping an eye on one or two things there while you're below in the shop? And it was, grand, no bother. And I suppose kind of the 6 months kind of came to an end, and we kind of had a conversation, and look, thankfully to Brian, there was a role there for me then, and I suppose I'm still here.
Did it kind of start off as a kind of a media relations, doing the programme, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
In the early days?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So it was primarily around the media stuff. I suppose I was still helping on the merchandise side of things as well, but a lot of it would have been around the media, website maintenance in conjunction with Deck Carey, things like live updates from away games, player interview requests, the programme. So I suppose around the time, it was something the club was doing in terms of looking at costs and stuff like that. So they were basically outsourcing the graphic design of the programme to a company and paying them. So the idea was basically that they could bring that in-house, and I suppose I was kind of taught. I wouldn't say I'm a graphic designer, I'm not, but I suppose I taught the basics of how to put a program together and stuff like that. And I suppose if you want to go back to maybe early 2007 and look at the first few programs, you can see it was a work in progress, you know. So, it kind of started on that front, and I suppose, it's just over the years, it's evolved from one thing to another.
You weren't there long, and then Arcadia came in, so I'd say you were only in the job, I'd say a couple of months, maybe a year or so.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So like 2006 was obviously Brian, then 2007 Arcadia came in, and look,
it became quite commercial then. Like in many ways, there was a lot more people added to the team.
Sure. Yeah, listen, the office grew massively, you know. We moved into the shop in Dawn Square, and we had our offices upstairs, and just the whole operation in terms of, you know, like the players you were signing, the budgets, all that kind of stuff. And look, I would only have had a fleeting knowledge of that kind of stuff then. But like, I mean, I think everyone remembers, you know, the plans that were out there, and massive stadiums being built and all that kind of stuff. Like, and it seemed like it was, you know, really going places. And I suppose I was kind of, look, great, I'm going to hitch my wagon to this and see where it takes me, kind of thing. And
it was exciting before the crash, like, but there was a sense of excitement. There was people being flown off from England to talk to the management team and all that. I know I came in at the back end of 2007, but it was and
you're going toe to toe. I mean, I remember, you know, Dave Mooney was like the hottest property in the country, you know, top scorer, I think he was, you know, for a team that got relegated, like, and Cork City are beating off everybody to sign him and bring him down to Cork and all that kind of stuff. And you're going, whoa, this is the stuff dreams are made of, like, you know, in terms of, like, it was great in terms of a workplace, but, you know, as a fan then you're thinking, we're after beating off Bows, Shamrock Rovers, Shells, and we've signed the top striker in the country. Happy days, like, you know, it was, seemed like the world was...
Even the likes of Alan Matthews was after giving up a full-time job in the bank, and a good job in the bank, to work with the club. You know, it was real serious. A lot of good players were brought back and stuff like that as well at the time.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was incredible, really. And you really just felt that, wow, you know, there's something we're on the brink of something amazing here. Like, you know, like you talk to any Cork City fan any day of the week, and they'll talk to you about the potential the club has. And probably the biggest frustration for any Cork City fan is that we've probably seen glimpses of that over the years, but maybe a feeling that we've never quite fully unlocked the potential of the club. And it really felt like that the investment and the expertise and everything like that was there to do that. And as we all know, then bang, recession, and the whole thing fell asunder pretty quickly, you know.
It was a strange time, wasn't it? That August, we were still in Europe, and the next thing, there was an examiner brought in, and
I just remember being away in Finland, and we're getting ready to go to the match in the hotel, and the next thing there was a big row because some of the players had ordered some sandwiches because there was a bit of a gap between their pre-match meal and when we were due to leave to go to the match, and the hotel were saying they have to be paid for before you can check out, and we were saying no, just put it on the account or whatever, like, and they were saying no, there's no, and I remember myself and someone else had to go down and basically go down to an ATM and take our own money out of the bank and pay. I don't know, it's like they charged us like €1,000 for some trays of sandwiches or something like that, because they were basically, like, the hotel were saying, right, we're going to phone the bus company and tell them not to collect you to bring you to the match. And I suppose that was the first major indication that there was
something wrong.
Something going wrong. Yeah, exactly. And Dave Myler was going at the same time, and I remember being put under a lot of pressure to get paperwork sorted for that, which, again, like, you put those two things together and you're kind of smelling that maybe things aren't quite as rosy as
there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And look, again, there were more senior people than me in those days, like, and I wouldn't have been party to everything, but yeah, you could see the ripples in the water, like, that you knew something wasn't right, like. And
it was a tough thing because people were let go, or their wages were halved or whatever, and then a lot of players left and stuff at the same time. It was it was
horrible. It was horrible. Like, I mean, I remember, I think, if memory serves me correctly, I think, like, there was 7 or 8 of us working in the office at the time, and I remember basically everyone was brought in, like, and some people were told, you're out of a job effective immediately. And I remember, I think it was myself and Laura Barry, as she was then, being told we'll keep you both on full time, but you're only getting 30% of your wages. And I think you were kept on part time at the time.
Because the FAI would pay me.
Because they were paying you, yeah.
And the FAI would pull the money if they did,
Yeah, so we went from, like, basically, I think 7 or 8 people full time in the office to 2.5 people full time in the office on 30% of our wages, like, and all of a sudden, I'm being told, okay, right, you're being kept on, but, these, you had 3 areas of responsibility, now you have 10, and you better start delivering. And, like, it was tough. And I remember silly little things now, like, ringing up everyone who advertised in the programme saying, sorry, but the programme's going black and white for the rest of the season. And one sponsor going absolutely mental at me, roaring down the phone saying, it's a disgrace, I paid for a colour ad. And I was going, jeez, I'm sorry. And then you're thinking, like, getting 30% of my wages, like, do I really need to be listening to this? So, like, it was, and, like, we were, in one sense, like, we were the fortunate ones. We were the ones who kept our jobs, like,
Yeah, and it was like everyone was brought up, I think, was it to the Metropole or something like that, and everyone one by one from the office inside in the Grand Parade, like, so it was a like, I never forget that day. It was a real, and it was an awkward day for anyone that was left behind, for the people. It was horrible.
Yeah, it really was. It was, like, you're kind of almost embarrassed, afraid to kind of look somebody in the eye, because I was thinking, like, what kind of surreal situation do you get told you're getting your wages cut by 70% and you're still embarrassed to look somebody in the eye? But it was just, thankfully been in a few scrapes since then. But
did you not feel like at that stage, like, did you not feel like, oh, I have enough of this and going? Or did you think that there was going to be light at the end of the tunnel?
Do you know what? It was one of those, I suppose, I was kind of, like, I was lucky then. That was 2008, I was 26. I was single. I'd actually just met my now wife.
I suppose
living at home, didn't have any real responsibilities, stuff like that. It was kind of like, if I'd had a mortgage, I'd have been out the gap. There's no two ways about it. But it was one of those ones that kind of saying, here, look, I'll hang in there for a couple of months and just see how it all plays out. Like, and I suppose, look, then the club was obviously taken over. We thought we were up and running again, and
then a couple of months in, and then there's another topsy-turvy situation.
Same thing happens all over.
Like deja vu in many ways, I'd say.
Yeah. And that was tough. That was really tough.
Was it tougher the second time round? Because obviously I was gone, like, but I had a feeling things were going to go pear-shaped.
I think you were. I think a lot of people, and maybe I was the only one that didn't listen to the warning signs, to be honest with you. But I suppose it was tougher in one sense, in that you'd been through it before, so people are looking at you going, right, you've been through this before, tell me it's all going to be okay. And on the other hand, the fact that you had been through it before kind of made it a little bit easier, in the sense that maybe you developed a bit of resilience at that point. But I suppose it was one of those, I suppose, like, in the back of my mind, look, obviously, as a supporter of the club, and have a lot of friends who support the club, I knew Force was being set up. I had joined our maybe signed the expression of interest form to join Force at that stage, and kind of knew that there was something going on in the background. And I was saying to myself, oh, just hang on in there.
That they'll come in and save the day.
They'll come in and this will work itself out. And, you know, I was kind of saying to myself, I don't want to walk away and then 3 weeks later the club's taken over, and I'm saying, God, I should have hung in there. Like, so no, I was kind of saying to myself, I'll hang on in there for, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and it ended up dragging and dragging and dragging. But I suppose, in the end, look, I hung in, and Kevin Mullen was there at the time as well. And it was just the two of us below in the office, and you weren't getting paid and all that kind of stuff, and it was horrible and it was messy, and not a time I remember with any great fondness. But there was, I suppose, as well, like, there's maybe a bit of a sense of duty, if that's not too grand a term, in terms of you're trying to keep the show on the road. Like, I remember, like, the late great Jerry Harris, and love to talk a bit more about him at some stage. Like, what a man, what an incredible man.
He must have been like a mentor to you.
He was. Incredible, just incredible. And Jerry's thing, like, Jerry had seen it and done it, and seen how many
previous clubs as well,
and all that kind of stuff. And Jerry's thing was always, we got to make sure we can put out a team on Friday night, no matter what's going on in the background. The show must go on. And I suppose probably that rubbed off on me a bit. And as it kind of moved towards a conclusion where you're saying, okay, there is going to be, a takeover by Force and the consortium that was there at the time, or else Force will be going it alone, and, they're going to need every bit of help they can get. So bloody hell, we'll hang in there. And, Jerry would have been there as well. Like, and it was just, hang on in there and try and make it happen.
So there obviously was a day when it came to an end. I mean, there was a High Court proceeding or something, and the club was folded, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Like, I suppose we'd had a couple of High Court dates where you're you're sitting in the office and you're just sitting there staring at your phone, waiting for a text saying, you have a job tomorrow, or you don't, and all that kind of stuff. And that happened probably, I think, at least twice during the year. And I suppose then we got to February and the whole licensing deadline and all that kind of stuff. And there was basically, I remember there was a day where went into work. Our offices were down in Cove. Went into work in the morning, kind of knowing something was in the offing, but not knowing exactly what and when. And an hour or two later, one of the owner's representatives came in and said, "Right, takeover's been agreed. You've 10 minutes. Pack your stuff and get out. Take what you can, but you're not allowed to take any club property. Obviously enough." And I remember trying to think, like, bloody hell, we've got a few rare programs and match pennants from European games. How am I going to smuggle these out the door and stuff like that? Don't know if I should be saying that. But
stuff Turner's Cross in the museum type thing.
Exactly. Yeah, some of the stuff that's in there now, I suppose, like trying to make sure that was rescued, for want of a better word.
It's important fabric of the club.
It is. Basically, we got our marching orders from the office, and then going up and meeting guys from Forest and going to a solicitor's office, and we're back and forth, whatever, and like we're being asked to go through lists of stuff that had been given by one side to the other and verify information and all that kind of stuff. And then you're in the solicitor's office and like 10 o'clock that night. Basically the FAI phoned to say that the licensing committee had not approved the takeover. And that basically meant that the club was effectively out of business, or the holding company. And I suppose they did say that they had granted a first division license to Forest in the same phone call. So it was kind of very mixed emotions, I suppose. You knew that there was going to be some kind of a team there, but
technically, technically it was the end of one club, the start of a new club, even though it was the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose, look, you often see that in social media going, the club went out of business. Look, I know I would be very firmly of the view, like, the youth teams kept playing and that they were funded by Forest, and that was the continuity of the club. And lots of clubs over the years have had their holding company go out of business, change, etc., etc. But I suppose at the moment in time, it looked like the club was done. And I just remember driving one of my colleagues home that night and had a long drive back home myself after I dropped them off, and like my head was in the bin. I was like, that's it, I'm done, I'm leaving the country, I never want to go to a League of Ireland game again. Like, my head was just gone. And I got a phone call from a guy who worked at a club in Dublin, who I was quite friendly with, and he said, hang on in there, you and others have a lot to give. Don't let the bastards get you down, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he basically said, you go in tomorrow morning, offer your services and start again. And the best way you can stick two fingers up at the people who've put you in this position is to rise to the top again. And I genuinely, I've said it to people before, like without having had that phone call, I don't think I'd have set foot in Turner's Cross ever again, to be honest with you. That's how I was feeling at the time. I don't know, maybe it would have been different, but that's certainly how I felt at the time. And it was just a very timely phone call. So yeah, went home, felt crap for a few hours, tried to get some sleep, and woke up the next morning and rang one of the lads in force and said, right, what can I do to help? And look, at the time it was, basically like,
was there a job there for you then? Like,
there
they didn't have the budget.
No, they didn't. They, like their budget, they didn't have any place for like myself, whatever in the budget. So I suppose they kind of said, look, maybe if you can give us a hand for a couple of weeks, try and get us up and running, we'll give you a few pound kind of thing. Like, and it was, and look. So I think in the end, they said, look, we give you kind of like a part-time contract or small money or whatever it was for 3 months, and we'll see how it goes. And excuse me, again, thankfully, it turned into something else,
Yeah. So that was the start of it then. But during that period, like, Jerry was always around as the club secretary still, was he?
Yeah.
So, like, when was it the case that did he kind of guide you through a lot of the stuff with the FAI and...
Yeah,
was there an official handover at some point, or how did that work?
No, I think I remember like when Jerry sadly passed away. I remember doing a short clip with Rory on Red FM, and I was kind of saying like I came into the job in 2006, and look, I was a supporter, being involved with the supporters club, went to every game home and away, and kind of thought, I'm clued in about all of this, like, and Jerry in his own rather understated way very quickly let me know that I didn't know half as much as I thought I knew.
Yeah.
But in his own very pleasant way. And kind of took me under his wing and taught me, like, there was a lot of technical stuff about the rules and regulations, but a lot of it as well was just how to do business, how to do things, like a small thing, but Jerry had a thing where and look, maybe everyone does it at every club. I don't know. I've only been involved in the one, but everyone that signs a contract with Cork City, Jerry put the contract on the table in front of me, go through it with them, whatever. And when they sign the contract, you stand up and shake their hand. It's a very small thing, but something that I continue on because I just think you can't even do it anymore now because so much of it is done online. But I just think it's like little touches like that aren't in any rule book, that aren't in any manual. I would have learned a lot from Jerry about that kind of stuff as well, just how to do things.
He was very much at the heart of the club.
Just an incredible man, absolutely incredible. Like, I suppose myself and Mick ring off and joke, like, when I started working with the club, Jerry was the secretary and he was the kit man as well. And over a period of time, he handed over the secretary's job to myself and the kit man job to Mick, and kind of saying he probably found the only two fellas in Cork that were as peculiar and OCD as he was himself about things having to be done a certain way. Others had tried and failed, but I suppose eventually he made peace with the fact that Mick and I were two fellas who do things, as he would say, the right way, and he was happy to kind of hand stuff over to us. But yeah, look, I mean, to be honest with you, Jerry probably single-handedly kept that club going a number of occasions over the years, even long before I had anything to do with Cork City, and there just aren't words to talk about the contribution the man made to football in Cork. There really aren't.
Must have been great for him though to see the club then kind of come back out of the ashes again and rise up in the way that it did over those few years, because you went from literally being told the club is gone to the next thing, getting that promotion from the first division, winning the title, getting into the Premier Division, and within a couple of years, challenging, which nobody would have expected.
Yeah, and I'm fast forwarding a small bit here, but like I remember being on the bus in the Aviva after we won the double in 2017, and I think the joke was like the last Cork team to win a double was in the 50s. And we're kind of joking that I think Jerry and maybe Mick Punch were the only two fellas on the bus that were alive the last time a Cork team won a double, But yeah, look, it was, obviously Tommy Dunn came in and he did a really, really good job. I remember when Tommy was let go, like I've been very friendly with Tommy. Like you can't, when you go into the trenches with somebody like that, when fellas have lost their jobs and you're signing fellas on £100 a week and everything's at rock bottom, and somebody comes in and galvanizes things and rolls their sleeves up when they could very easily turn their nose up at it, you know, which was what Tommy did. And then win it the way we did against Shells of all teams. For then, you know, 12, 18 months later, all of a sudden, you know, everyone wants them out. Like I found that very difficult.
It is a tough one in football.
Yeah,
I kind of
is.
spoke to Mick about that a few weeks ago in terms of he was the chairman at the time as well, and he found it hard as well.
Yeah, Mick and I often talk about it, I suppose, like, you know, for some people might know this, but like Mick and I actually played for Blarney United under 11s together, so we go back a long way. You know, we wouldn't have been like best mates or anything like that back in those days, but I suppose, you know, we've worked together in a variety of guises, you know, over the last number of years, and you know, we would talk a lot, and we often talk about that. And you know, it's again, like as I often say to Mick, like I don't blame the board for making that decision. I think they were given no choice because the crowds just fell away. But it speaks to me about something kind of that's wrong in the game in general, not a Cork City thing, but just wrong in the game. This, you know, this thing about just sacking people left, right, and centre. Particularly at this level, like, it's grand if you're managing in the Premier League or the Championship, you know, you get a couple of months severance pay would feed a small country.
That's true.
For a year, whereas here, you know, guys are living, you know, day to day, like, you know, right, you get the boot from managing in front of 7,000 or 8,000 people, and all of a sudden, like, you're ringing up the local cash and carry and looking for shifts or whatever, like, you know, it's just not. And I just think it's something that's got into the game. And look, as I say, you know, it is what it is. Like, it's not going to change. But I just remember I found that very hard, like when Tommy left. But again, you know, the words of Jerry Harris, show must go on, have to keep the show on the road. And then, you know, Stewie came in and took it till the end of the season, and then John came in, and I wouldn't have known John very well when he came in. I remember watching him as a player, and his local side down in Enniskeane, Riverside, he used to bring the kids up to a game once or twice a year. He'd ring me looking for tickets and stuff like that. But from the minute he came in, I remember coming out of the office, John was announced as manager. I met him, did the press release, put it out, and then we had a press conference the next day. But he came in that evening after work, and I sat in the office with him it was supposed to be a quick chat, and I was there for 35, 40 minutes. And I remember a buddy of mine texted me saying, well, what do you reckon? And I just said, geez, if he's half as good in the dugout as he is sitting in an office chair, we're in for a hell of a ride. And they were prophetic words, you know, because, yeah, look, John, I suppose,
he was obsessed, really, I'd say. Was he driven, like?
John was, and I mean this in a nice possible way, John was nuts. Like, I mean, like, you know, he was just the passion that the man had. I remember Stephen Beattie saying to me, like, he said, John would pick you up at Cork Airport and bundle you into his car, and by the time you got to the bottom of the airport hill, like, you think you're signing for Barcelona. You know, that was the passion that John had for Cork City, for the League of Ireland. And yeah, look, I mean, it was a crazy adventure, a crazy ride with John. You know, the highs, the lows, it was just incredible times. Like, I mean, you know, like the managers I've worked under, like Damien was there when I came in, Alan Matthews, you know, still see Alan when we play Pats, and always enjoy catching up with him. Paul Doolan, Tommy, still in touch with Tommy. And then John came in, and he just...
Oh, Roddy Collins.
Yeah. What about Roddy Collins? Yeah.
We'll skip that part.
We'll skip that part, yeah. But yeah, John was John's a force of nature.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember talking to somebody else who had worked with John, like, in a non-footballing capacity, just like in a day job, like, and he said he's just personality, he's just so intense and so driven and so passionate, like, you know, and that was, like, you know, selling boxes or something like that, and he was multiplied by 10 by the football side of things. Like, you know, John was just an incredible personality. We often joke, like, you know, you go down to John and say, you'd be going down to his office and you say, right, yeah, look, John, I'm up the walls there, I have to head away there now in a bit or whatever, and you come out the door and you've 5 more jobs that he's after giving you in the course of you going in to tell him that you didn't have time to do anything. You know, he just had that way about him, like, he'd convince anyone to do anything, like, and you could see that in his teams as well, like, they were just incredible, like, you know, like, literally, like, Marky Sulf, Shawnee Maguire up top, all the way back to Nults and everyone in between, like, they would run through brick walls over and over and over again. And you get the late winners we got in that season in 2014 and all that kind of stuff. Like, it was just incredible, like, you know, what he achieved. And, you know, I know, look, there was only the 1 league title and the 2 cups and all that kind of stuff, but, like, when you compare what we were up against, you know, on that Dundalk side, look, you know, history will show what a good side they were. Mightn't have liked to admit it at the time, but there's no denying it.
There's possibly, in many ways, if you look at the Premier League, it kind of reminds you, John could be like Jurgen Klopp versus Pep, kind of, in many ways, isn't it? With probably, the money that Dundalk and...
Yeah, probably a very good analogy, really. Yeah. I think, like
any other time he would have dominated the league.
Yeah, and there's always that kind of feeling of like, there was a couple of times where you felt like, did we leave one slip here, or leave a cup slip here, or a league slip there? You probably feel like we did. We could have won a little bit more, but on the other hand, we probably had no right to win anything. You know, like I just look back at it and go, to be fair, like as a supporter, as I said, started out with like the Dave Barry team winning the FAI Cup and the League Cup, and then the early 2000s, mid 2000s, you had Liam Murphy, Pat Dolan took over, incredible European runs. Liam Carney was on name checking the Malmo game again recently. And then Damien takes over and he wins the league and a cup, and Alan comes in and wins the Setanta Cup, and then Tommy wins the first division. Like, there's been, kind of...
There's been lots of highs as well. I know there's been extreme lows, but there's been lots of highs.
Absolutely. But I suppose in terms of sustained success over a period of time,
John's period
was
most
spell
successful.
was probably the best we've ever had, and I said that was, in no small part down to his passion, his drive for the club was just incredible. But
during that period as well, then you kind of ended up in kind of more of an operational kind of management role. Then it wasn't just media relations, it wasn't just kind of like club secretary type thing.
For us, I suppose, where again, there was just kind of a restructure, really. I suppose, like when Forrest kind of took over, then it was, as I mentioned, like kind of got a contract for 3 months. Kevin Mullen was doing commercial, and I was doing a lot of other stuff like ticketing and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose just over time, Kevin moved on, Timmy Murphy came in, Timmy moved on, all that kind of stuff. Like, it just, people come in and out, and I suppose I've just always kind of been there to pick up the slack, for want of a better word, and try and provide that level of continuity. And I suppose, look, kind of 2016 was kind of crazy because I suppose I was there on my own for probably 3 or 4 months. And look, I was very well supported, in fairness, in terms of, like, I was the only person in the office, but like, I remember, the board kind of put together a subcommittee to help me with the day-to-day. And I remember, like, meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning out in Bishopstown. It was myself, the late great John Kennedy, another absolute giant of the club, another mentor, I would say, who we have never and never will replace.
And made so many people fans of the club as well.
Just like, what a man. But myself, John Kennedy, Pat Lyons, and Alan Whelan, the accountant, and we'd be meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning and kind of making a plan for the week and all that kind of stuff. And there was kind of 3 or 4 months there where I was on my own, and, like, we had that run in Europe, and like, I was just doing everything, like, like you're doing the ticketing for games, you're over in Europe for the away games, meeting the UEFA delegates. I remember being over in Genk, and I was at an official function, and I had to step out because I was on the phone to Bose. We were trying to sign Dave Mulcahy from Bose at the time, and I think they were looking for a fee, and John didn't want to pay a fee and all this kind of stuff, like, and you're kind of like, you're trying to do 10 jobs at once, like, and that was like, that was the most intense. And again, look, a bit like I said earlier, I probably hung in there because I didn't have responsibilities. Like, I was engaged and had a house and all that at that stage, like, but if I'd had kids, I just wouldn't have been able to do it, like, so it was just, again, just happened to be
timing was a good thing in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. It was just able to cope with it, to be honest with you, but it wasn't sustainable, and look, it was only for a few months, like, so there was another bit of a restructure, and
Paul Wycherley came in, was it?
Yeah, like Lisa Fallon and David Geary came in then for a while, and then Paul Wycherley came in after that, and I suppose, look, obviously around then, things were tailing off a little bit football wise, and obviously then, John and the board decided to go their separate ways.
That was hard, I'd say.
Yeah, it was, but I suppose, look, to be honest with you, it was coming. Like, you could just feel that it was coming. And I suppose, again, like, I go back to the Tommy Dunn thing where, again, like, I'd worked with Damien, Alan, Paul. They were all kind of, like, Damien was there for a few years, but, like, I only really worked with him for a year. Alan was there for a year, Paul was there for a year, Tommy, I suppose, was there for 3.5 years. The longer you work with somebody, of course, the more the relationship's going to grow. And I suppose with John, then it was, what was it, like 5 years? Like it was,
But success as well, though.
It was, yeah. So it was tough, but again, you just got the vibe around the place, like that. It was kind of coming. Like, I mean, I remember myself and Mick coming home. Like, travelled to a lot of games with Mick, and we're coming back. I think from Derry, it might have been his second last game, John's second last game, and we'd lost, and we're driving back in the van, and neither of us said a word, and I can't remember which of us said it first. We're like, "Do you reckon that's it?" Or we didn't know, but the fact we were even having the conversation, kind of knew, But look, again, John is John. Like, I remember he had a meeting with the board, and he rang me afterwards, and he said, "Yeah, I'm gone in. That's it." And there was no,
that was it.
No crying, weeping, or wailing about it. Like, that's what it was. It was football, and
In hindsight, was it a bad decision?
It's so tough because...
Did you give someone time to turn it back around, when you've had so much success?
I think, to be honest with you, right, and again, John is someone I've an awful lot of time for, and, still chat away to John now and again and stuff like that. Like, I think there was an element at the time where, like, if I remember, John's last game was at home to Finn Harps, and they were bottom of the table. And the kind of whole... I'm not blaming John for this, but I think he'd kind of said in the press a few times, if we can just get that one win, we'll turn it around. And then we went on a run and we just didn't win a game. And then we play at home to the team at the bottom of the table on a Tuesday night in Turner's Cross, who part-time team, they've travelled all the way down from Donegal, and we didn't beat them. You're kind of saying, like, if you're not turning it around against them, when are you going to turn it around? And look, if you look at what happened afterwards in hindsight, would we have been better equipped to deal with what was thrown at us in terms of some of the off the field stuff and that, and in terms of having the passion, the energy, the drive and the stability that John might have provided? Yeah, possibly so. But again, a bit like the Tommy situation, sometimes there's just an air of inevitability about something, and people just move on. You just have to deal with it.
Lots of changes in managers then for a period of time with John Cotter and Finn. Obviously then Colin came in. A lot of different people in and out.
Different people and different personalities and different approaches. Like, I mean, Cots was, Cots is one of the best guys I've ever worked with. Like, just an absolutely stand-up guy. Really, really good guy. Good coach. Very popular around the place. I think he was probably a bit unfairly tarred by people. Just looked at him and went, it's
a continuation.
John was his own man. So I thought maybe that was a little bit unfair. Fenny came in and he just couldn't buy a break, could he? He came into a team that their heads were gone. They were in free fall. Budgets being cut, financial issues. He was on a hiding to nothing, to be honest with you. And obviously then, relegation happened. Colin came in too late to try and save us. Could he have anyway? Who knows? Again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Colin came in and, a bit like Tommy did several years earlier, started from absolute scratch, just rebuilt the thing, not one player under contract, no money, and you're starting from the absolute depths of depression all over again. And he rebuilt it again, and
with a lot of young players.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, it's funny because Colin obviously had been with us as a player, and I'm sure you remember, all the press wanted to talk to Colin all the time.
Oh, and he was
Colin was having none of it. Colin
wouldn't even go to a school.
No. So I remember when Colin was a player, I wouldn't say we didn't get on, but I'd always be going to him, asking him to do stuff, and he'd always be telling me no, and that was about the extent of the relationship I had with him. And I suppose then, he came into the academy and we probably got to know each other a little bit better. And in my mind, when the decision was made that Neil Fenn was moving on, first of all as caretaker, but then in terms of taking over permanently, there was no other name in town other than Colin. It couldn't have been anyone else, because just the number of players that he had brought up that were in the first team squad or on the verge of the first team squad, and he could bring up that would be in the first team squad. And just, again, a bit like John, the passion, the drive the man had for Cork City, like it was a no-brainer for me, to be honest with you. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he was like, I suppose this means I'll have to do some interviews now and stuff like that. And we were kind of joking about the run-ins we'd had 10 or 15 years earlier when he didn't want to do stuff. And, you know, Colin was, again, he just re-energized the club, you know, kind of made Cork City again, I think, to be honest with you, a bit like John had done in a way. So, it was brilliant. And look, obviously, Colin moved on, and we kind of had the way last season went, and then, you know, Tim's come in this year, and I think he's done a really good job.
Going back to, you know, after John and the finances, like, how did it go from the heights of, you know, the success to kind of running out? Like, I suppose it was a number of things. We get carried away?
I think we did. I don't think there's any point in saying otherwise. Like, I suppose, you know, you look at what John had done over a sustained period of time. I suppose we were kind of banking on
that
Europe every year, and possibly even getting through a round in Europe every year. Like, it's sliding doors moments, isn't it? Like, I mean, if you look at it, like, you go back to 2019, and we played Progress Niederkorn from Luxembourg, and like, they were awful. They were bloody awful. Like, I remember we played them in Turner's Cross, and was it 2-0 or 2-1? 2-0, I think they beat us.
Which shouldn't be happening.
We handed them 2 goals. We did, you know. And then we go over there and we get back into it, and we're ahead and whatever. And like, I remember Kevin O'Connor having the free kick in the 94th minute, and he sticks that in the top corner, and, you know, everything changes, doesn't it? You know, and then it was Rangers in the next round, and like, if you just, like, again,
you had that fixture alone, like,
yeah, like, I mean, like, you know, get out a beer mat and do the maths on the back of it, like, you know, like, you get to January and you're whatever 600-700 grand in debt. You know, you go through that round, you've 250 grand in prize money, you've a sold out Turner's Cross, which is, I don't know, what's it going to bring you in?
Potentially that could have been even moved to a bigger stadium.
Yeah, you know, potentially, you know, 100 grand in gate receipts or something like that. You've TV money, all of that. You know, I mean, you could easily, merchandise, everything like that. You could easily, I know that's all income, not profit, travel costs and all the rest of it to come out of it. But I mean, there's absolutely no way, I think, that you wouldn't have been coming out with 300 or 400 grand cleared profit out of a game like that. That's half your debt that nearly puts you out of business, cleared for one kick of a ball, like, you know. So, like, I suppose, you know, and again, look, I know people have differing opinions on what happened, and
people have been very critical of the board, of the time, of the success, haven't they?
Yeah, and look, again, like, I don't think anyone should be immune from criticism. You know, I look back on things that happened myself then and say to myself, I wish I'd done X instead of Y, or wish I'd said something about this or whatever. Like, again, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but when you're in the moment, as I said, you know, we had sustained success under John. You can see how people did get carried away in terms of the board and all that kind of stuff. Look, at the end of the day, these are volunteers, you know, doing their best. Were mistakes made? Don't think you could in any way argue that they weren't. But there was no ulterior motive. And again, had that free kick hit the top corner, we'd be probably having a very different conversation today. So, you know, the thing for me is, I'm not interested in kicking the you-know-what out of people about mistakes that were made. I'm more interested in learning from them and making sure that, you know, if we ever find ourselves in that position again, that we make the right choices next time. And, you know, I'd like to think, I suppose, over the 17, nearly 18 years that I've been there, that I've learned enough at this stage, and still learning, you learn every day, but that if I ever find myself in any one of those different scenarios again, that I'll be able to say, hold on a second, lads, this exact same thing happened back in 2018 or 2019. This is what we did. It didn't work. So we need to do something different, or here's what we need to do. I'd like to think that's what I'd be able to do.
So when Dermot came in then last year, obviously it was kind of like nearly going back in time for you. I suppose in many ways you had the safety net of, not that there was a safety net, but the fans were running the club. They knew you were kind of one of their own. It's gone into private ownership again. How did that feel?
Yeah, I suppose even if I can just dial the clock back another small bit first, I suppose obviously you had the whole thing with Grovemore and Preston and all that.
Yeah.
Then,
and that fell apart. Like there was an agreement and it fell apart, didn't it?
Yeah, I suppose. Look, I have to say, the simple reality of it is, we were in a situation where we were denied a license and we were basically told, again, 600-700 grand, whatever the case was, needs to be found and you've got a week to find it, or the club's gone. And I remember at the time, like myself and my wife had just had a baby. She was born in November. Paul Wycherley had left. So I'm had a massive change in terms of my work circumstances. Just had a baby. My wife hadn't been well around the time. And my head was just all over the place. And then all of a sudden you're told, oh, by the way, your job's on the line unless you find $500,000 in a week. It was stressful.
Yeah.
But I remember picking up the phone to Peter Ridsdale. I dealt with Peter a number of times over the years, Shawnee Maguire, Alan Brown, Kevin O'Connor, etc. And
nice coincidence that your first match with Cork City was Leeds, and there was a Leeds man here again.
And here's another one.
And he would have probably been possibly involved in the club back then.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. But here's another coincidence. Tiernan Brooks, who we signed on loan last season, his agent was John Newsom, who played for Leeds in that game.
Mad.
But yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how the world goes around. But I just remember picking up the phone to Peter on behalf of the board and, just having a conversation about, could we do a deal on, we had, a sell-on clause on players and stuff like that. And, I have to say, and, again, look, it didn't work out, and such is life, such is football. But the bottom line is that Peter and Mr. Hemmings stepped in and handed over a bundle of cash to ensure that we had a football club.
But why did they do that? What
I think there were a number of elements to it. I think, look, they did see an opportunity, and I'm not going to suggest it was 100% philanthropic in the sense that
obviously it ties to Cork with Trebulgan and things like that as well.
I think, look, Mr. Hemmings, I think his mother was from Tipperary, if memory serves, is what I was told. I think he had property in Bantir, he had horses and stuff like that. He had Trebulgan.
He had done a connection with Ringmahon as well on the back of Alan Brown and a few others.
I think look at what Brownie's done over at Preston. He's been an incredible player for them, and I think there was probably always a fondness from Mr. Hemmings and from Peter towards Cork City on the back of
what happened there,
the Alan Brown thing, and just how good Brownie'd been for them and all that kind of stuff. So there was a relationship there, and I suppose, I just picked up the phone and said, look, lads, we're goosed here, and in fairness, they were brilliant, and I suppose, look, the reason I kind of dial back to just say that is because we wouldn't be here talking about that if they hadn't. They were under no obligation to. They could have just said, sorry, not interested, good luck.
So they wrote a check. Was there an obligation? Did they have an option to buy then?
They had an option to buy. Yeah, they did.
Within a year or something, was it?
Yeah, they did. But I mean, I remember, the amount of money that was involved, and without going into specifics, we thought a certain amount of money would do it, and next thing we got word back that it was going to be considerably more, and I can remember looking around the room and thinking, no chance. Yeah. And next thing there was a phone call made, and Mr. Hemmings said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And again, it wasn't like we asked for X and he said okay, and then X became Y and he still said okay. Like, there was no obligation. And I think, obviously there's a lot of water under the bridge since then. And obviously Mr. Hemmings sadly passed away, and the takeover didn't go ahead and all that kind of stuff. But, I just think it's important to recognise what they did for us in our moment of need, because I'm not being funny, like there was nobody else putting their hand up saying, we'll help you out of that hole. And
did the club have to pay them back?
No. Like, that was all part of the deal, and I suppose, look, in the end they decided for various reasons not to go ahead with the takeover. Yeah. And I think, look, Mr. Hemmings passing away, was a contributory factor in that as well. Like, but I just think, as I said, it's very important to acknowledge we wouldn't be here without what they did for us. So yeah, roundabout way, coming back to your question, obviously then, and I think the board made it quite clear that they felt investment was needed. And Dermot came forward as somebody who would be interested in, we obviously had...
There was a vote before us then.
Yeah, exactly. Look, obviously there was a lot of conversations in the background before it got to that point, and then it went to the board, and then it went to the members, and obviously that was passed overwhelmingly, and Dermot took over the club. So as you say, like, it was kind of back to the future in terms of, you know, when I started, when Brian was the sole owner of the club, and now that's back where we
to
are
the
again.
same kind of scenario.
Yeah.
But were you able to give advice then? So, like, obviously last season we're back up in the Premier Division, and then things are kind of going to go a bit pear-shaped, a bit like before, but rather than splash the cash, was it a case of hold tough?
Yeah.
You know, because that could have been the easy solution. I mean, Damien was here a few weeks ago, and sometimes it doesn't always work, and you could end up being in the same kind of...
Yeah, no, I think, look, I suppose the difference between having a private owner and like, I mean, again, if you go back to 2019 under Forest and that game in Luxembourg, like, if we'd been under private ownership, then maybe, just maybe, the club could have gone to John Cotter and said, bring in 2 players, and that might have won us the game. So by spending, say, 50 grand, it might have netted you 500.
Yes.
But we couldn't, because the risk was too great.
Yeah.
I suppose, obviously, Dermot or any private owner has the luxury of being able to say, well, look, yeah, okay, if I'm going to lose X, I'm happy to throw another little bit on top to try and turn the thing around. And, you know, look, obviously we did a lot of business in the window last summer to try and turn things around. But I just think, honestly, like last season, anything that could go wrong did go wrong. And I don't want to, you know, say, oh, we were unlucky or whatever. Like, you get what you deserve. We're in the first division because we deserve to be there, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. But we have to own it. But I genuinely think, you know, you look at what happened, even take the goalkeepers just as an example. You know, you bring in a really highly rated goalkeeper from Celtic, and he plays 2 games and then he's out injured. You get to the window, you bring in a really, really highly rated goalkeeper, he breaks his foot 10 minutes into his debut. Like, you couldn't write that stuff,
Yeah,
you know, you really
it
couldn't.
just went against you.
You know, it did. And sometimes that happens. And, you know, like, again, for, like, when we were on a stage in Grand Parade in 2017 with the League and FAI Cup and the Women's FAI Cup in front of us, some other poor sod was down the bottom of the table, because that's football, you know. And when it's your turn to be down there in the you-know-what, like, you just have to take your oil, you know. It's not pleasant. And look, again, I talked earlier about the potential for this football club, I genuinely think is massive. But sometimes things just don't go the way you would like them to go. They don't go the way you'd plan them to go. And despite people's best efforts, things don't work out. And last season, honestly, I remember, like, we had a kind of a staff night out just before Christmas, and somebody asked me, you know, I've been here so long, somebody who hasn't with us that long at that stage, and they were kind of saying, you know, like, what was your best season? What was your worst season? I said, last season was my worst season. And it might sound crazy because
You've had a lot of lows, yeah.
There'd been a few low points where you weren't getting paid and all that kind of stuff. But I suppose what really got to me last season was, like, if you look back, say, under Paul Doolan, like, we went 4 months without getting paid, I think it was. But we still finished 3rd because the team were going out and they were absolutely
fighting,
busting their balls for Cork City. And Park, whatever's happening off the pitch, they went out and they fought tooth and nail. So, like, you could have an absolutely crap week, know you're not getting paid, but at least Friday night, look forward to a team that's going to give everything and do really well and blah, 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 blah. And last season, it just didn't happen. You know, like, the football was nearly the worst part of it. It was the
heads were
worst part
gone, the players were kind of...
Yeah, look, again, you know...
You brought in a lot of players from overseas, didn't you? Like,
Yeah, and again, look, I think sometimes it can be easy to, you know, I've often heard people say, you know, those loan players don't care. Sometimes I've seen loan players who really do care and others who don't. I've seen contracted players who really do care and some who don't. I've seen lads from Cork who don't care and fellas from Dublin who do, and vice versa. You know, sometimes it can be easy to point the finger in a particular direction, but, like, the simple reality of it is, you know, I think there's no two ways about it. Last season was not good enough. We all know it wasn't good enough. It was horrible. As I said, worst season I've ever had, because you couldn't even look forward to a game on a Friday night because kind of just you just knew things just weren't going according to plan. But I felt really, really sorry for Dermot as well, because I suppose, look, he had bought into Cork City, put his heart and soul and his money in, and what he got was relegation and abuse. And, like I understand, Dermot in his position, me in my position, if you're in certain positions and things aren't going according to plan, you're going to get grief. You're going to get abuse. You're going to get this, that, the other. It's horrible. It's not nice. It shouldn't happen, but it does happen. So it was horrible. As I said, last season was the worst. But what are you going to do? Sit in the corner and cry about it, or dust yourself down and get back on the horse? It's only one option as far as I'm concerned.
And it looks like that's happening at the moment. It's kind of nice to see so many young players being given a chance again under Tim.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, look, again, I don't think these things happen by accident. Like if you go back to when we got relegated in 2020, going into the 2021 season, we were putting the budgets together and all that kind of stuff. And we worked really, really hard to protect the boys' academy and the women's teams from budget cuts. The first team took the blunt of the budget cuts because that's where the damage had been done. That's where the cuts had to come.
Yeah.
And it was a strategic decision that we would protect the academy. And I think what you're seeing now is in part due to the fact that we didn't cut the crap out of things in the academy because we knew how important it was. And since Dermot has come in, that's only ramped up even further in terms of, putting guys on contracts and all that kind of stuff, which started under Forrest but has continued. And, trying to improve things. Because again, for a lot of people, the men's first team is kind of probably all they really pay attention to. And that's fine. That's how I started. But there's an awful lot more to it. And, you don't want a scenario whereby a squad of 20 odd players performs poorly and another 140 players suffer as a result. That's not right or fair. So you need to try and manage all of that. And it can be very difficult. But as I said, you're seeing some really, really good academy players come through. I think our track record as a club over an extended period of time, in terms of the quality of player that's coming through, and what they're going on to, is a testament to Liam Carney, Colin Healy before him, the coaches that work under them, the Cork Schoolboys League clubs, grassroots coaches, volunteers. Like Cork is a hotbed of football.
And the club is at the heart of that, really, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. As I said, look, I said a while ago, like I went in as a 24-year-old who thought he knew an awful lot more than he did. And Jerry Harris quickly put me right. But at the same time, one thing that hasn't changed since then is my belief in the potential that this club has. Like when Turner's Cross is bouncing, when Cork City are playing well and winning, there's nowhere in the country can match it. Like I remember when we played Genk back in 2016, we're having a walk around in Genk was like 30,000 seater stadium and unbelievable, like the hospitality facilities and everything like that. And I remember like the pre-match UEFA meeting, on one side of the table you had myself, Robbie Keller and Mick Ring, and on the other side of us we had our counterparts from Genk, and there was two of them for every one of us, and each of their two had a number two as well. Like there was like 3 on one side of the table and about 15 on the other side of the table. It was mad. But like I was walking around Turner's Cross with one of the Genk directors, and like obviously like Turner's Cross, we love it, but
small
nothing in comparison, like and it always stuck with me. He said I don't know how to express this in English, but he said, we have a saying in Belgium that a place smells of football, and this place smells of football, and it's always stuck with me. And I was like, again, there isn't a direct, that's obviously like an idiom or whatever in is it Flemish or French? Flemish, I presume. We don't have a kind of translation for that, but for me, there was an awful lot, like Turner's Cross does smell of football. I know what he meant, even if that's not how you'd say it in English. And yeah, when Turner's Cross is rocking, there's no, and that is, I suppose, even it was just something that popped into my head even the other night down in Kerry. We went 1-0 up, and I was kind of over behind the dugouts, and there's 350 Cork City fans on the other side, and they're going bananas over the far side and jumping up and down and the drums are going or whatever. And, 20 years ago, that was me. I've kind of come to terms with it really at this stage, but every now and again, like you look at an away terrace or you look at the lads going into a pub for a couple of pints before the game and then just going down to the shed and they're bouncing or whatever and going, God, I wish I wasn't wearing a suit. I wish I was in the middle of all of
back
that.
in again.
Yeah,
no
exactly.
pressure. Just enjoying the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But look, I've made my choices, so I don't think I'll ever get back to that.
So to wrap it up, over the years, what was the best match? The match that sticks out. You've been involved in a lot of them at this point.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very, very tough one to answer. Part of me would love to say the 3-0 win at Oriel Park in 2017 because it was such a dominant performance, but I wasn't there. I was on my honeymoon. I was watching it on a beach in the Caribbean. So
well, it was a good place to watch it anyway.
While my wife was sulking with me for going to watch it. That's probably one of the best displays I've ever seen from a Cork City team, but I can't lay claim to it because I wasn't there. There have been some, remember Genk 2016, unbelievable performances. Like the level we performed at, even though we lost, was absolutely sensational. But winning the double at the Aviva, incredible. But I'm going to go with winning the first division away to Shells in 2011.
Yeah,
94th minute, Cummins.
Brilliant.
To do that there against Shells, when I started going to games, like Shells was the team everyone hated, so I suppose and there's some great people involved in Shells who I've got to know over the years and stuff like that, but there's a little bit of me is still like they're just top of the pile in terms of getting one over on them and stuff like that. Can't get past that one.
In terms of what player then stands out, I know you've dealt with so many, you've probably involved with contracts with so many as well.
Yeah.
But who was the one that stood out to you? Who was the favourite?
Again, it's really, really hard because you look at say someone like Shawnee Maguire, Shawnee was only here for 2 years.
Very small time. Yeah.
Feels like he was here for 5 or 6 years, such as his status, such as the impact he had. And then you're like, he was unbelievable. He was just brilliant. Like Stephen Dooley was only here a short spell.
That's right.
What a player. I think we miss Stephen Dooley far more than anyone generally realises what a player he was. There were so many brilliant players in that team. And then you're like, yeah, but you absolutely love watching guys like Shawnee or Dools or whatever. And then you're going, they're only here 2 years. How could you give them the nod over some fellow that was there 7, 8, 10 years?
They gave their life to the club.
Yeah. For me, growing up, Derek Collin was a player I just absolutely he
gave
was one of
everything.
my favourite players. Yeah, he really was. Dan Murray then after that.
They were very similar actually.
Yeah. Maybe I just have a thing for a
Big centre back,
centre half or whatever. Probably I'd find it hard to pick between. And look, Nultz. I think bashing him is becoming a popular thing to do on this podcast. So
poor Nultz, we'll have to get him on.
Yeah, exactly. No, he's not allowed near microphones anymore. But yeah, Nultz. Nultz was an unbelievable. I remember someone saying to me in about 2005, 2006, would he not go away now and just play first team football? Why is he happy sitting on the bench? And 15 years later, put your medals on the table. He was unbelievable. So hard to single anyone out, but Nultz, Dan Murray, Derek Collin,
great players,
guys like that. Greg Bulger's come back in. What a player! An absolute Rolls Royce of a player. I can't name just one. I can't.
Well, I'm sure the way they're playing at the moment, there'll be a couple of more added to that list in the next.
Look at Cahill O'Sullivan, Jade Newell, absolute gems.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and again, there's guys like that who've come through the academy and probably only had fleeting spells and gone on to greatness, and again claim them as their own or whatever, but very hard to put them above the guys who played 200, 300 games.
Even though we probably produced players that have gone all the way to the top, represented our country, but hardly ever actually played match time.
Yeah. You look, Alan Brown, David Myler only played a handful of games.
That's all, yeah.
Brilliant guys.
Even Shane Long and people like that, very little time on the pitch.
Incredible careers, absolutely incredible. But yeah, kind of hard to give him a nod over some fella that's played away in the rain in Salt Hill, Devon, or whatever, you know.
Look, yeah, no, it was fantastic. We could be here for another few hours. And maybe there's another podcasting at another stage, but thanks a million for coming in. I'm sure people will appreciate it. And thanks in particular for all the work you've done over the last nearly 2 decades at this stage.
I know, yeah, it's a long time. No, look, it's my pleasure. I think I said to you before we started recording, look, there's times it can be a chore, but there's no fellow out inside in Bishopstown holding a gun to my head making me stay there either. I do it because I love it. And look, I think, as I said, the potential of the club is unbelievable. What we need now is drive on. We've had a good start to the season. Drive on, get ourselves back in the Premier Division and build from there. And when everyone at this football club is on the one side in the trenches fighting together, the potential is incredible. And, you know, I hope we see that over the next couple of years.
Let's hope so. Welcome to the podcast, Padraig. How are you?
Great to be here. You've been here for the last 12 weeks.
You've been very good to us.
I know. I'm glad to get the call, you know. So,
I suppose you've had a big background in charity for years. You were involved with the Guide Dogs and a few other things over the years.
Yeah.
Since when are you here?
Well, I joined here in April 2019. I suppose it was at the lucky enough to be employee number 1.5 here. We were starting out. We were founded by a lady called Kate Jarvie, who founded the Crann Centre, and really with the vision really to, I suppose, change, just for a real systems shift in how services for people with disabilities would be planned and would be delivered. And Kate's vision was was focused on providing really valuable service to people with we would say neurophysical disabilities, which would be spina bifida, muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, stroke, and spinal injury. And there are fantastic organisations that provide services to children and adults. I guess our difference would be that we would provide services to the whole family. That's our kind of overall ethos. We call it a 2-generation approach, and it's around thinking that disability in a family impacts on the fabric of the family.
Yeah.
I guess we know it impacts more on the child or adult with the disability, but it also impacts on the siblings and on the parents. And I suppose what's at the heart of what we work in, the space where we work in, is that in order to ensure that the person with the disability has the opportunity to thrive, you need to provide a range of supports to their family members as well too. So we would work with siblings, would work with parents, and we would provide a range of programs right across 6 areas that we think are the most important parts, that they tell us are the most important parts of their what gives them the opportunity for better health, better well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being, and then increased opportunities for participation. And that's what we do. We're lucky enough to be in a great facility, to have a great team of people here, and more importantly, to work with 500 clients, 500 families that have given their trust and support for us for the last 5 years. You know. So
5 years ago, was this a brand new building, or did it exist under something else before?
It did. The noise any noise that's coming through in the background is the noise of Roadstone next door to us, and this used to be John A. Wood's head office with John A. Woods, which was, for anybody not from Cork, it's a major supplier of building products, sand, gravel, all that sort of stuff. And Roadstone, they've been taken over by Roadstone. Roadstone weren't using the building, and Kate and the original founders back in 2014-15 saw it and said that this could be the right place to have a really high quality centre for people that wouldn't be a clinical setting, but would just be something else. Couple of things about it: really accessible, but where we are here in Ovens, just accessible off the main road, but also between Kerry and Cork, which
Junction 3 off the main road, and just a bit up from kind of Dell, I suppose, in many ways. And so people be familiar with it.
Absolutely, people might know Lakewood next door, where a lot of soccer, a lot of football played. So a really great building. That's one thing, but I think you also have to have a really good, I suppose, just something that's going to differentiate yourself, a service that's going to really add value to lives. It's all very well to say that you're innovative and all of that, but if the innovation isn't adding value for people. So I think certainly the model that we have, the way that we work, that 2-generation approach, working with family members intentionally, and parents and children and adults. And the most important thing is that it's actually delivering for the people that we're working with. And we've gone from, I suppose, just very, very much a standing start to having about 520 families that we work with at the moment. And that about 520 families that we would support, and about 300 to 350 families would be engaged with on an ongoing basis. And range of services, psychological supports, mobility, independent living, health, continence. And I guess one of the key things that we would do is provide that opportunity for social connection.
Okay.
And when
Is that where the workplace comes in, where you have hot desks that are available kind of for the bigger community and people with disabilities as well?
It's all about inclusion. It's all about an opportunity of people to take part, and it's, the whole, what's happening here is what you guys are doing is all about sport and the opportunity to take part in that. And so people with, there's everybody talks about inclusion, and inclusion, it's where people have the opportunity to take part in all aspects of a person's life. So inclusion means, I guess, getting access to better health, better well-being, and also work, education, and aspects of living. That's leisure as well, and so I guess we try to think what are the key areas. So in order to be in the workplace, there are certain aspects of your health and well-being that need to be addressed and need to be supported. So that could be your physical mobility and how to bring your wheelchair into space. It could be your continence and how you're actually able to self-manage for a day away from your independence, that you don't need support. You may have the support of your parents or your carer, and all of that contributes. And then with our workplace that we have downstairs, it's just creating the opportunity for people with disabilities to be part of the new world of work as well, too, where people are working out of the office more or working in a collaborative setting. And back in 2020, when COVID came, everybody's work life changed, and we had the idea that, well, what's that going to be like for people with neurophysical disabilities that we would work with, we would support. And so we had the room, and we managed to bring together the funding to be able to put in place a co-working space that would be purposely designed for everybody, not just designed for people with disabilities. That concept of universal design, where you design for all, and then that includes people with a disability and includes people without, say, a notifiable disability, without a declared disability. So it's a great space. There are people down there working today that certainly all environments are accessible, as they should be, but some are more accessible than others. And I think the ethos here and the environment contributes to a person with, say, a physical disability coming in and feeling supported. And we've also built an ecosystem then of support from the likes of the local enterprise offices and mentors who are committed to helping supporting people.
And they work with you?
Absolutely, they work with us. They're from Cork County Council, Cork City Council, our supporters. And
they did a big event here actually for Enterprise Week, didn't they?
They did, and it was brilliant. It was actually great. It was just an opportunity for people with this. The Enterprise Week, as we know, is all about enterprise, it says in the tin. And Cork City Council had the idea that, again, to be inclusive, but to be meaningfully inclusive. Like, what would it be like if we ran an event that gave people with disabilities a sense of what it would be like to start your own business, work in your own business, or set up by yourself. And we ran it out here, and it was really, really successful. They were delighted with it, and it was actually, again, one of the first times that had been done in a local enterprise week anywhere in the country. And I suppose for us, really, the opportunity is to kick on with that now and see what more we can actually do. And an example of what we did in there recently was last year we worked with 3 individuals who had a stroke or a major traumatic incident in their life. And after you recover from that, and people do recover, we've supported people with their rehabilitation in that space. Then you think about going back to work. So we were able to provide an environment which was kind of a second step back from work. So to come in and practice being in the workplace with other people around, the noise, the sensory, and that's all the sensory exposure to that, the physicality of being in work, the demands on yourself, and we were able to provide that setting. And thankfully, those 3 people went back to their jobs, a little bit more with a little bit more chance of success than, having been here at the Crann Centre. And it was the kind of full package of support for them, possibly the psychological supports, possibly the practical therapeutic supports, and then being here in the environment.
So you're a not-for-profit organisation. Are you supported by HSE, or how does it work?
We're a registered charity. We have a level of support from the HSE for one of our services, which is our health and continence program. That's just one part of what we do. It is critical to us that we get HSE support to make the organisation sustainable. So a job of work and an ongoing piece of work that I'm involved in, we're involved in, is discussions with the HSE to make that happen. And then the rest of it, we are involved in fundraising. We're involved in relationships with corporates. We apply for grants in the open grants market. We deal with foundations, high net worth individuals, and it's for us. So what we see as the future for sustainability for the Crann Centre is a mix of HSE funding, which is appropriate because the HSE recognise that we're offering services which they can't and don't offer themselves and which are high value, and they're happy. Well, I'd like to think that would be funded. Should be funded. That will happen. Hopefully it'll happen in a timely manner for us. That doesn't place us under undue financial pressure, because we, and I suppose our original funding came from a grant from our founder and our founder and chair, Kate Jarvie, who made that initial philanthropic donation, which allowed for the purchase of this building and gave us the working capital to get started. And we had that really, I suppose, unique or certainly rare opportunity to have a leg up and to have the money to get services up and going. Because oftentimes people, have to struggle to get services off the ground, to hire staff or whatever. Now we've worked hard on our fundraising. Opportunities to be associated with Cork City are really great. To be your charity partner, and to have that opportunity, that creates profile, creates access to media, creates access to opportunities like this, and also creates creates opportunities to create vital funds as well. So yeah, it's a full time. It's really important to us that we have a sustainable funding stream that allows us to make commitment to the 500 families that are at right now that are reliant on that are connected to us for services.
And there's an opportunity for the listeners to get involved in fundraising in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely,
with walk and roll.
Absolutely. Well, we do events and we do activities that ideally engage our community. So one of the events that we come up with, and we've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years now. We were delighted last year that Cork City were the sponsor of it, and again this year to be associated with it as well. And really, it's about doing 5K your way and walk, roll, run, push, or pedal. Some of the last two the push would probably be very relevant for people who would have compromised mobility and would use a wheelchair. And it's really about that democratic way of bringing everybody together and doing an event. And obviously, doing the 5K is really important. For some people, it's the first time that I've ever had an opportunity to do that, either independently or put myself to that level of achievement. But really, then there's, like anything, there's an opportunity to raise funds as well amongst friends and family. And everything that you need to know about walk and roll is on our website, crawncentre.ie. And it takes place over the weekend of June 6th to June 9th. That's about a month's time, less than about 5 weeks' time.
So hopefully there'll be good weather for it anyway.
Hopefully there'll be good weather for it. I think right now we're lucky enough to be doing a collection. I know we're doing a collection at the Cross for the Thursday night match in the middle of June. So we'll be there with all of our T-shirts and all of our volunteers doing a collection for the Crann Centre. Again, we're delighted to have that opportunity. But our walk and roll is our next big event, and it'll happen all around Cork. People can do it in Dublin. Last year we had people doing it overseas, and they'll have an opportunity to register and put all that on our website. And the guys here would be delighted to talk to anybody as an individual or as a corporate or as a team, or anybody that wants to say, we're going to take it on and we're going to do the challenge,
And I presume the facility that we're in is also available if anyone wanted to use it and potentially bring more revenue into Crann Centre as well, the podcast studio.
Absolutely. And we put the podcast studio in place. We mentioned our co-working space down below in the ground floor here. And at the time, the government, and it was really great to be part of it. The Department of Rural Community Development were really keen as we were in COVID to support the development of hubs around the country. There's a connected hubs network where there are co-working hubs in places.
Oh yeah, where they can use a pass in each one of them or whatever. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Or in small communities around the place where they wouldn't have had access to broadband or community working spaces. So anyway, as part of that, we didn't get the funding for the development of the facility. We were grateful to Cork City Council, to the Open Doors Initiative and AIB for funding the development of that. But when it came to, they did provide a rather generous grant for the facilities to be kitted out and to add more gear to it, essentially. And one of the options was to add, you could apply for a grant to put in place a podcast studio. Brilliant. And we said, this would certainly add to the hub, but it would also add to our capacity to bring people like yourselves in, or to bring in people from the community who wanted to have a space locally for podcasting. And we started to use it ourselves. We have our own podcast that we would run for the Crann Centre. But I think it would be brilliant as well if we had our clients that wanted to practice, learn how to use podcasts, how to use the technology. And it's brilliant. It's just a really great facility to have. So yeah, we're open to hearing from anybody who wants to.
They can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. They can get in touch with us at crancentre.ie.
And finally, you're a big City fan yourself?
Yeah, I think very much that Johnny come lately to the whole thing, really.
Is
you
it?
know, we'd always been interested in soccer. You know, growing up. I'm not from Cork originally, you see, but from Galway originally.
Okay.
You know, so
we won't hold that against
my
you.
earliest memory of a League of Ireland soccer was we lived 30 miles from Galway in a place called Milltown. And my dad passed away, but he brought us. You might remember when Giles and Dunphy and Ray Tracy came back and took over Shamrock Rovers back in the day. Well, they played Galway United. What was then Galway United, I think it was. Yeah, back in the day in Terryland, and this was a big deal. Now, these guys had come. They had David O'Leary's brother, Pierce O'Leary. This back in 1970 something. And they had Pierce O'Leary, David O'Leary's brother, playing playing for them. So anyway, that was my first ever League of Ireland. And going through the years, you'd kind of go on and off. But I met Dermot about just shortly after he'd taken over the club, and I said to him, it was really interested in the whole thing about how it happened. And obviously, you'd followed the last with Forest and all that, and we've been to some of the matches through the years, and but just said so I started to come really, really interested, and now I wouldn't miss it at all. I mean, absolutely, just being there is. I think it's just a fantastic community. Yeah. It's just the breadth of people that you meet there.
Actually very inclusive club.
Absolutely.
I think we talk about inclusive here. That's the one thing I would have always said about Cork City. There's people from all walks of life, and
absolutely. I think that, and people that I've met there, like I've lived in Cork for 28 years now. And people that I would have met that we'd see there, and not to say you'd be surprised to them. Why wouldn't they go there? It's great fun. It's Friday evening. For me, it's really interesting because there's no place in Cork where there are 3,500-4,000 people gather on a Friday night anywhere. True, whether it's and to see that level of just what it means to people is just really what it means to the kids, what it means to adults sitting there, and we all have our places where we go. So I just found my place, which was
I see in the Donny Ford,
really, So I find you find your place, and it just means a lot. So I brought my son who lives there in Cork to it, brought my wife on one occasion as well, but it just
you're introducing new people to it.
Yeah, well, I just think it's just really, really interesting. I think last year was tough, obviously, for everybody in the club and associated with it. But I think that's all part of the narrative as well, too, isn't it? No, not many people.
It can be boring if we're doing the same thing over and over again.
It'd be horrible to be. I was just driving in this morning, listening to how there was yesterday morning. They're talking about how Manchester City have won. This is going to be their fourth in a row, or
probably fourth in
a row. And is that impacting on their performance? So I know the lads would probably be delighted to get to a situation where 4 championships in a row would be something.
Shamrock Rovers have done it here as well, actually.
But I just think that So anyway, to answer your question, it's yes, absolutely can't wait to get back on Easter. Can't wait to get back on Bank Holiday Monday. Missed a couple of matches there recently, and you kind of feel it, So sometimes you're traveling and you don't get to be there. And ambition is to get to more away matches. That's the
You want to get on the road, so this
definitely.
summer.
I was due to go to Wexford, but it didn't roll. So that was So
There'll be plenty of other opportunities
absolutely,
later in the year.
get to the other state, and I think. But it's just a really interesting, to see how it's happened. I think the support is amazing, just absolutely amazing, really. To see what it means to people, and to witness that. That's good for you.
Good for the soul, as they say.
Absolutely.
Well, look, it was fantastic to have you in. Well, or for you having us in, actually, because you're hosting us as such. But best of luck to the centre with the fundraising, and if there's any other things happening this year, please make sure you let us know, and we'll plug it.
And listen, we're delighted to have you here, and best of luck with the podcast. It's great to see the success that it's had, topping the charts, and just what it means to people to take it up. So we're absolutely delighted to have you guys here. You're now part of the Crann family, I would like to think. So good on you guys.
Yeah, thanks for listening to the Rebel Army podcast. We look forward to an away fixture with Cove this weekend. I'm hoping Aaron will be back safe and sound in the studio next week to record episode 14. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and talk to you next week.